My name is Paul F. Aubin, and welcome to AutoCAD Architecture Essential Training. In this course, we'll start by laying out a simple floor plan using wall objects. I'll show you how to draw walls using a variety of techniques and discuss how the walls automatically interact with each other to form clean joints. We'll add other intelligent objects to our layout, such as windows and doors that automatically cut openings in the walls. We'll see ways to refine the layout using tools and tool palettes to change the style of walls and other objects, incorporating such things as materials and automatic hatching. We'll see how with the click of a mouse we can completely change the graphics used to display our drawings, whether changing from small-scale plans to large-scale, presentation views to production views, or switching from 2D to 3D, all without redrawing. Using projects will make quick work of building models, creating plans, elevations, and sections, and even generating live schedules and tags and documentation packages. So if you're ready to begin leveraging the power of AutoCAD architecture, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. If you are a premium member of the lynda.com library, you have access to the exercise files used throughout this course. The exercise files are in a folder organized by chapter. I've placed it here on my desktop. However, I'd like you to not open up the folder and just simply double-click files when accessing them in this course. Instead, I'd like you to access them through the application. So I'm going to switch over to the AutoCAD Architecture application and demonstrate to you how you would access each kind of file that we provide. If we call for a drawing file, then you simply use this link right here to open that file. So we'll click Open Files, browse to a folder. So I'm in my Exercise Files Chapter 4 folder as an example here. Select a drawing file like this one here called Floor Plan, and just simply click the Open link to open it up. I'm going to close the file, and I don't need to save it. If the lesson calls for a project or a construct or a view, then you first need to load a project to get started. To do that, you go to the Open a Project link here, and once again, you can browse to the location. So again, Desktop, Exercise Files, and I'm in Chapter 4 as an example. These items listed here are the projects. So I'll just double-click the project that I want to load, like this Adding Roofs project. It'll turn bold to indicate that it's loaded, and then I can close this window. Next, it will display the Project Navigator palette. If the lesson calls for a construct, you go to this tab. If it calls for a view or a sheet, you go to those tabs. And then to open a construct, you would double-click the file right here. So in this case, I've double-clicked the column grid construct, and then you proceed with the lesson. Now, in some cases, when you load a project, it may ask you to repath the files. It is very important that you always choose this first link here to repath the project now if that happens. Otherwise, the linkages between the various parts and pieces of the project may get broken and the lesson may not perform as expected. If you don't have access to the exercise files, you can follow along from scratch with your own files and projects. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the units that will be used as a measurement system throughout this course. This course is being authored in the Imperial Measurement System. However, AutoCAD architecture can work equally well in imperial units or in metric units. In fact, when you install the software, it's likely that it included more than one icon on your desktop, allowing you to launch the software in the measurement system of your choice. So I've got an AutoCAD Architecture US Imperial icon here and another one here for US Metric. So if your preference is to work in metric units, it's recommended that you double-click this icon to launch the software. It is possible to change the unit system that you're using after the fact once you're already in the software. But since so many of the tools and features rely on the units in the measuring system, it's a little bit better to launch from the appropriate icon because it will change all of the settings when you do that. So if you need to switch units, it's ideal if you can quit the software and then launch back into the other icon. However, if that's not possible, if you happen to already be in a drawing and you need to convert it, it is possible to convert the drawing. But there are definitely a few things that you should be aware of when trying to do so. So I'm in a really simple drawing here, and I've got a few elements in there, and I put some dimensions just for reference. So there's a couple approaches you could take here. You could simply convert the units of the drawing, but I think working with the dimensions might actually be helpful to understand what you're getting. So it's actually possible in AutoCAD to have a dimension display the dimension value in two different units. So let's look at that first. I'm going to select this dimension that I have right here on screen, right-click, and I'm going to choose a command called Edit Dimension Style. When I get in this dimension style dialog, I'm going to click the modify button right here, and then you'll notice we've got primary units and alternate units. So currently my primary units are set to architectural, which is US imperial, that's in inches. And if I click on alternate units, I can check this box to display the alternate units. They're going to be in decimal format, multiplying by 25.4, which is the multiplier between inches and millimeters. Down here you can say that you want to put that number below the primary value instead of next to it. So let's click OK and close. And now you're going to see that I've got my imperial number here and my metric number here. Now that may be all you need just to kind of give yourself a little bit more comfort when you're working in an imperial drawing, is to just create a dimension style that has an alternate unit, and then you can measure things and just kind of compare them to what you expect them to be. If that's not suitable and you actually need to convert the drawing, then you can do that here on this menu with the big letter A. So you go to this big letter A menu, it's called the application menu. You come down here to drawing utilities, and then you go over here to drawing setup. In this dialog, the first tab is units, and you can see that the drawing is currently in inches. I can open up that choice and choose millimeters instead. When I click OK, it will ask me if I want to rescale the objects in the drawing. And I think it would be a pretty good idea to do this, otherwise they're going to be the wrong size. So I'm going to choose this rescale option right here, and then the objects will go off screen because it's rescaled the entire drawing. To get them back on screen, you can use this icon over here in the corner and just click right where it says top, and that'll just basically re-zoom in on that object. Now, the multipliers I'm using for the dimensions don't make sense anymore, but if I select this object and I come over here to properties, you can see that the width of that wall is 152 millimeters. If I cancel out of there and I select this door, the width of that door is 914 millimeters. So it did scale the objects correctly. It's just that those numbers may not make perfect sense in terms of standard sizes in other locales, but at least they're dimensionally correct. So if we want to fix the dimensions, we basically just select the dimension and repeat the process to go to Edit Dimension Style. And then what I would do is just reverse the alternate and primary units. So for the primary units, I'm going to choose decimal. And for the alternate units, I'm going to choose architectural. And then for the multiplier, I'll put in 0.0394, which is just 1 divided by 25.4. Close out of there. And now you can see that I've got the millimeters on top and the feet and inches at the bottom. So that's how you can convert an existing drawing. Now, I do recommend that for the duration of this course that you go ahead and work in imperial units. The concepts we'll be covering apply regardless of the unit measuring system that we're using, and I try and keep the input of units at a minimum. So I think you'll find that if you follow along in imperial units, it won't be all that uncomfortable, and it'll be much easier to follow along in the lessons than trying to constantly convert the files. In this course, we're going to be talking about AutoCAD architecture. But just how is AutoCAD architecture different than AutoCAD? Well, AutoCAD is a program that allows you to do technical drafting with accuracy. Now, that applies to just about any discipline you can imagine. If you are an architect, if you're a plumber, if you're a circuit board designer, set designer, furniture designer, you name it. If you need to do technical drawings, you can use AutoCAD to create those drawings. AutoCAD architecture has all of the features that AutoCAD has, but it has additional features that are specific to the discipline of architecture. So it has tools that are unique to the building design industry. So where AutoCAD has standard primitive geometries like lines, arcs, circles, and rectangles, AutoCAD architecture has all of those, but also has walls, doors, windows, roofs, and stairs. So what I'd like to do is do a really quick little demonstration comparing and contrasting the two and give you a sense of what these two programs are like. So if I was trying to do an architectural drawing using plain old AutoCAD, I would have to start with a basic line tool. So I would go to my line command and I would start to draw some lines on screen. And then I would have to offset those lines to make the thickness of my walls. And it might look something like this. I'd have to trim those lines up to clean up this intersection. And if I wanted to add a doorway in this location, I'd have to draw more lines, offset them again, trim again, and then I'd have to add my door. Now, chances are most firms are going to have a door symbol already pre-designed. We call those a block in AutoCAD. But just the same, that block would have had to have been created by somebody, and it might look something like that with a line and an arc. Now, once I've done all of that, then I have to look at these objects and say, well, they're all white and they're all on a single layer called 0. So then I'd have to go into my layers and start creating layers for them and put them on the different layers so that I'd have the ability to turn things on and off separately from one another. I'll skip that step. Now let me compare that to the same process in AutoCAD architecture. Here, instead of starting with lines and offsetting, I would start with a wall. Now I'd draw the same basic shape, but it would take fewer clicks because drawing a single wall gives me both sides of the wall. It gives me a thickness. And up here, it automatically cleans up at the corner. Better than that, if I add a door, that door will automatically cut a hole in that wall. Now later, if I wanted to move this door, that door moves by itself and does not take the hole with it. But if I decide to move this door, it moves along the wall and the hole follows along with it. Notice that these objects here are different colors. When I select them, you can see over here on the properties that that is on a layer called A-wall, where the lines here were on a layer called 0 and just simply white. This one is on a layer called A-door. So not only are the objects coming in and interacting with one another, but they're also going automatically to a predefined set of layers. And then finally, if I change my viewing point to another angle, you can see that the stuff that I drew in standard AutoCAD is just simple, flat, two-dimensional line work, but the stuff that I drew with AutoCAD architecture elements is so much more. So throughout this course, we're going to be focusing heavily on the AutoCAD architecture-specific techniques and tools, and using the basic AutoCAD techniques only when they provide value to our overall process. So with that, let's go ahead and get started learning about AutoCAD architecture. In this movie, we're going to start taking a look at the overall environment of AutoCAD architecture. And I have just launched the program, and I'm greeted here with the Getting Started screen. I want to talk about this screen first. So here on this screen, there's two basic areas down at the bottom of the screen. We have this Learn link right here, and we have this Create link here. Now, the arrow is pointing to Create, and that's currently where I am. So this page offers you the ability to open existing files or projects, or up in this area here, to actually create a brand new file. If you click the Learn link here, it just sort of shuffles the page over and presents you with some videos that you can click on to learn certain essential skills. So we have a What's New video over here, and we have some Getting Started videos over here. So I encourage you to take a look at those when you get a free moment to do so. Let's go back to this Create tab over here. And when you start a new drawing, if you just click this link here, you're going to get the default drawing template that is assigned in your system. Now, depending on how your system has been set up, that may or may not be the template that you want. So if you'd rather choose a particular template, what you actually do here is click this little arrow right here, and that gives you a long list of available templates. Now, it's sort of subtle, but you can see that the one that I used last time is sort of highlighted slightly in gray right here. So this is in the US Imperial installation. This is the default template that AutoCAD architecture uses. It's called AEC for Architecture, Engineering, Construction, AEC Model Imperial STB. So I'm just going to click that link, and that's going to create a new drawing based on that template. Now, files in AutoCAD or AutoCAD architecture are called drawings, and they have a DWG file extension. So if we were to save this file, look at it on our hard drive, it would end with the extension of DWG. So now, when I'm done creating the drawing, it displays the full interface of AutoCAD architecture. And there's a lot to talk about here, so we're actually going to do this over the course of this and the next several movies. And what I'm going to focus on here is the basics at the very top corner of the screen. So at the very top left-hand corner is this big letter A icon right here, and this is called the application menu. And if you open up that application menu, it's essentially a file menu. We've got commands to create new documents here. We've got commands to open existing ones here. We can save and save as. We can export out to other file formats, and we can publish and print. So all the sort of standard file menu functions that you would expect to have, you can find in this application menu. Now, most of these have a little sub-menu. So the way this works is you just sort of hover your mouse over the item first, and then the sub-menu will display. So you can see here that under New, I could create either a new drawing or a new project. Now, we're going to learn about projects in future movies, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. Currently, we're just in a new drawing, so it's just sort of a standalone drawing. If I hover over Open, I could also open a drawing either locally from my hard drive or out in the cloud. So if I have an Autodesk 360 account, I can open it directly from the cloud, or I could open projects. You can even open other formats like IFC and DGN. Save doesn't have a flyout because there's only one thing it can do, is just save the file. And then, of course, Save As does have a flyout because you might want to save to other formats. And then Print and Publish also have flyouts because there's lots of options associated with printing and publishing that we'll talk about in future movies. Now, up here at the very top is these two little icons here. This is the recent documents, and currently I have a clean installation, so I actually haven't opened any recent documents, but as I begin to open documents, they're going to be listed here on this menu. And then it's kind of like a shortcut to get to files that you've opened previously. If you click this little icon, it shows you what you currently have open, which for me at the moment is just Drawing 1. And the reason it's called Drawing 1 is because I just created it new and I haven't saved it yet. So it doesn't really have a name. So AutoCAD just substitutes the name Drawing 1 as sort of a stand-in until you save it. Now at the bottom of this menu is this Options button here. Now, I'm just going to open that up, but I'm not really going to talk too much about the options just yet because we could almost do an entire course on the options in AutoCAD. It's that detailed of a dialog. There's that many settings to look at. But as you can see, it's a multi-tabbed dialog, and some of these tabs actually go off screen here. So for now, I'm just going to kind of mention that it's here and accept all the default options. So I'm using a default US installation, and I'm going to get all of those options. But if you need to change settings, you can get to them from that command there. So let me just simply OK out of there. Now, next to the application menu, you have this Quick Access toolbar. Now, it's called Quick Access simply because it's got the commands that you would use most frequently, and they're just sort of in this little convenient location. So in this case, it's just sort of New, Open, Save, Save As, and there's also an Undo and Redo command here. Now, later when we talk about projects, we're going to see a couple buttons here associated with projects, so we'll get to those shortly. And then beneath the QAT, we have the ribbon. Now, the ribbon is organized into tabs. So we've got a Home tab, Insert, Annotate, and so on. You might have other tabs on your ribbon. It depends on the installation of AutoCAD that you have and whether or not any additional features have been added. But at minimum, you should have a Home tab, Insert, Annotate. You should have the few basic tabs that you see here. It's organized into groups called panels. So this first panel is a build panel. It has commands like walls, doors, windows. We've got a draw panel for lines, arcs, and circles. We've got a modify panel to move, copy, rotate things, layers, and so on. So they try to organize each of the ribbon tabs into these panels for associated commands. Now, there's several other aspects of the interface that we'll talk about shortly, but we'll save those for the coming movies. So to get yourself started, you usually start by creating a new drawing. You can do that either in that home screen that we started with, if that's what displays when you launch, or you can easily use the application menu and its new functions, or even this new icon right here to create a new drawing. And that's usually the first step to getting started to working in AutoCAD architecture. So let's continue our tour of the user interface in AutoCAD architecture. I'm in an empty drawing file called Drawing 1, and I got there just simply by clicking on the new link on the startup screen or using the icon up here to create a new drawing. And I want to talk now about executing commands. And there's a variety of ways you can do this in the AutoCAD environment. So we briefly talked in the previous movie about the ribbon. And so if you find a command on the ribbon that you would like to execute, it's as simple as clicking that button. So for example, if I wanted to draw a wall, I could simply click this button right here and then begin clicking points on screen to draw my wall. Now, to get out of a command, you just simply press the escape key on your keyboard. Now, there's other ways that you can execute similar commands. For example, over here on the left-hand side of the screen, you may have a tool palette displayed, and you'll notice there's a wall button right there. That does exactly the same command that I just got to a moment ago by clicking this button here. So there really is no difference between those two. Now, I'm going to stay in the command for a moment here and direct your attention down to the bottom of the screen. So this area down here is called the command line. And the command line is sort of the central interface of the AutoCAD environment. It's actually possible for you to hide all the buttons, all the icons, all the tools, and work exclusively using the command line if you wanted to. You could type in all your commands if you knew what the name of the command was to type in. And this wall command that I'm working in right now is actually called the wall add command. So if I escape out of here, after a moment or two, you're going to see all that sort of command history fade away, but the command line is still visible at the bottom. Now, I don't even have to move my mouse down there. If I just simply start typing, you'll notice that the command goes right into the command line. Not only that, AutoCAD starts to try and guess what command I mean. So I've typed the word wall, and as you can see, there are several instances of commands that begin with the word wall. Now, if I keep typing, it'll narrow that down, or if I like one of the commands that I see on that list, I can actually use my mouse to choose it, like if I wanted wall modifier or wall merge add, or just simply wall, which is actually the parent command of wall add. So as you can see now, if you look at the command line, it says the word wall first, but then next to it, there are several other words in the brackets there that have that little blue capital letter in front of them. The capital letter is sort of like a keyword that you would use to execute that particular command. Now, there's a couple ways you could do that. You could type the letter A because that's the keyword right there in blue, that capital letter for add, or I can actually just use my mouse and point right to add, and that would run the wall add command, and then I'm drawing walls again. So as you can see, there's lots of ways to get to the same command. Ultimately, it's really not important which method you choose. They all get you to the same place, so it really becomes a matter of personal preference. But the command line, regardless of whether you use it to execute commands, is an absolutely critical part of the user interface because it gives you feedback for the command that you're on. So you always want to kind of keep your attention on the command line, at least briefly, so that you kind of know where you are in the application. And of course, if you get lost and you're not sure where you are, you can always press the escape key a couple times to cancel out of the command and then sort of start again. Lots of ways to execute commands in AutoCAD architecture, but the command line is sort of like your wayfinder to help you know where you are at any given time. And you can also use it as a primary interface mechanism to allow you to execute commands. In this movie, I'd like to talk to you about context ribbons and context commands. And to do that, I want to open up an existing file that already has some drawing elements in it. So I'm here in AutoCAD Architecture, and I'm on the startup screen. And in a previous movie, we talked about how you could use the links over here to create a new drawing. If you have a drawing that you've opened previously, it's going to show up over here in this Recent Documents area. And as you can see, I've got one listed here called Floor Plan. Now, you may not have that listed there because you haven't opened it before. So instead of clicking it here, which I certainly could do in my case, what I'm going to do is just simply use this open link right down here that says Open Files. Now, the other way you could get to that is to use the open icon at the top of the screen here on the Quick Access toolbar. So either one would give you the same experience. And when you click that, it would allow you to browse out to a folder and find the file that you want to open. So I'm going to go to my exercise files in my Chapter 1 folder and select this file here called Floor Plan. Now, when the floor plan opens up, it's a very simple file. It's just got a 2-room floor plan, and then off to the side, I have some shapes over there. So there's a couple concepts that I want to start with before we start talking about context ribbons, and that is the elements that you see on the left-hand side, the shaded and colored elements. Those are what we call AEC objects. AEC is the abbreviation for Architecture, Engineering, and Construction. And all that means when we talk about an AEC object in AutoCAD architecture is that it's a special object that has some sort of architectural functionality. These would be things like walls or doors or windows that behave like those real-life elements. On the right-hand side, I have 3 very simple generic elements. I have a circle, I have a rectangle, and I have a line. These are just drafted geometric elements that could represent anything. So that line could represent anything. It could be architectural, it could be non-architectural. It's just a line. Likewise with the rectangle and the circle. So those are just sort of standard AutoCAD elements. So I wanted to have a collection of both on screen so that we can see that when we select them in a moment here, you're going to see the difference in the context ribbons. Now, let's talk about selection next. The way selection works is you've got your crosshair here that moves with your cursor. As you move this crosshair over an element, but before you click, it will highlight that element underneath the cursor. And a little tooltip appears, and in this case, you can see that the kind of element that I have is a door, and it's on a layer called A-door, and its style name is standard. I'm going to move over a wall, and I'll get a similar tooltip. It's a wall element. It's on a layer called A-wall, style name, and style description. Now, we're going to talk about layers and style names and descriptions in a later movie. So for right now, just think of that as additional information about that element. Now, if I move my mouse over here and I highlight the circle, it will give similar information, but it'll just say it's a circle, and then the layer in this case is going to be layer 0, as is this one, as is this one. Okay, but these are lines, and this one is actually not a rectangle. It's an object that AutoCAD calls a polyline. A polyline is like a multi-segment line, and in this case, that multi-segment line is just in the shape of a rectangle. If you click one of these elements that's under your cursor, so what I'm going to do is highlight one of these walls, and then I'm going to click on it. That will actually select the element. Now, when I do that, the ribbon will change. So what I'm going to do is press my escape key to deselect it and direct you to the ribbon at the top of the screen. Notice that it says I'm on the Home tab right now. But as soon as I click this wall, it will switch over to a ribbon called Wall, and all of the commands that you see on that ribbon are what we call context-sensitive commands, because all of those commands have something to do with a wall object. So if I deselect again and I pick a door instead, notice I'm back on Home tab until I click the door. Now I'm on a door ribbon. If I deselect again and I pick a window, now I'm on a window ribbon. One more time. When I click the circle, notice nothing changes. Not every element in AutoCAD architecture displays a context ribbon. In fact, that's typically reserved for sophisticated elements like AEC elements. Your basic geometric elements like circles and polylines and lines don't display context ribbons. Now, that doesn't mean that there's nothing that we can do to those commands. We can certainly modify those kinds of objects. But to get to the modification tools for things like walls, doors, windows, spaces, we're going to have these context commands, and we're going to be able to do all sorts of things with them. We can add others like them. In this wall, I could add additional doors or windows. I could change the way it's justified or cleaning up. There's a lot of different commands that are associated with walls. So in addition to looking at your command line, like we talked about in the previous movie, it's a good idea to get in the habit of paying attention to these context ribbons as they're displayed, because often exactly the command that you might be wanting to do to that object you just selected might be displayed right there on that context ribbon. So it's a very convenient way to get to those commands that are pertinent to the objects that you have selected. In this movie, I'd like to continue our tour of the user interface with a focus on the palettes. The palettes are these floating windows that we have over here on the left. So I have my tool palettes over here, and then below that I have my properties palette right here. Now, there's lots of palettes in the AutoCAD user interface. We just have these two displayed in the default installation of AutoCAD architecture. Now, these are floating palettes, which means that you can pick them up and move them anywhere you like. So you can see that if I just put my mouse over the title bar, click and drag, I can move this palette anywhere that I like. Same goes for these tool palettes right here. I can pick it up and I can move it anywhere I like. Now, if you drag it all the way to the opposite side of the screen, you're going to see the title bar will actually shift sides. It will kind of flip the palette around. And then this is the title bar now, and I could move it around. And again, if I bring it all the way back to this side, it'll flip around again. So it senses the side of the screen that it's near, and it flips the palette. So if you prefer to have your palettes over on the right, you can just drag them over there, or on the left, you can drag them over there. Now, these palettes can be resized. So you do that by just putting